Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls from around the world.
Oh
Hello,
God.
everyone, and welcome to episode 32 of the Clown Fiesta podcast. I'm Blue Jay, and I got J&T 250 with me. And we had an interesting weekend of LCS games, let's say. I definitely enjoyed them, but I wouldn't say I was too excited with the level of gameplay. What would you say, J&T, after watching the games this weekend?
I don't know. It's probably the most entertaining week of LCS in terms of like games. Like I don't know. Yeah, like you said, they weren't necessarily the highest quality, but we saw a lot of upsets. A lot of high kill games, a lot of fiestas, a lot of clown fiestas, you could say.
Yeah, no, there was definitely good games over the weekend. I'm just a little bit afraid when I see our top teams not looking quite so good. Um, but I mean, with that, you get some of the bottom teams picking up some dubs, and therefore the league is just more competitive, right? So you get the good with the bad. Um, do want to mention to people that some people in the live chat are noticing that we're starting half an hour earlier than we normally do this week. Well, we know that a lot of the people that listen to our show are also listeners of Hotline League, and Hotline League is starting earlier this week, and so we didn't want you guys to miss that show. So obviously, we thought we would adapt. We don't really know what we're going to do for next week yet. The time will probably be different next week as well, but we'll be sure to let you guys know via Twitter or something like that. I don't know, but we'll make sure to try to fill you guys in. What else? What else? Uh, I guess we could talk about the teams that were eliminated real quick. Just want to mention that officially going into this week, CLG, FlyQuest, and Golden Guardians are actually all eliminated from playoffs. It's sad because CLG started to look a little bit better. We saw them take a win off of Team Liquid. Actually, I think they went 2-1 this weekend, but unfortunately, too little, too late. But it's definitely nice to see them start to pick up some wins. Any other thoughts, J&T, before we get into topics?
Yeah, it was kind of weird how like CLG got eliminated from playoff contention and then ended up beating Team Liquid.
Yeah.
It was because they lost their match on Saturday. They just mathematically couldn't pick up enough wins to end up tying another team. And unfortunate. Kind of CLG starts looking good, but that's why it's so important to like start the season out well. Because if you just start
Yeah.
out the season like they did, losing a bunch of games, throwing a bunch of leads, it doesn't really help your chances going into spring playoffs. But it will give CLG somewhat of an advantage going into summer, just because it seems like they have the momentum rolling with them, and it kind of seems like everything is starting to click together for them, and hopefully that can translate into like better practice. They have a good off season, and who knows, maybe CLG could be contending for playoffs in summer.
Yeah, and it also speaks to like, look, you need to look good for more than just one weekend. Like, yeah, they had a good weekend overall, but like, you need to look better for a whole season. Obviously, you're not going to make playoffs that way. And yes, they're looking better at the moment than some of the teams that are in playoff spots. But again, you need more longevity than that. We will talk a little bit more about CLG in a little bit, and about all the teams for that matter. This week, we're going to do our main topic this week is going to be talking about whether teams are performing better or worse than their current LCS record. So we will get to that in a little bit. For now, though, we did want to talk a little bit about TSM and 100 Thieves. There has been some, maybe not the best of. I don't even know how to phrase this, honestly. Basically, they're not looking too good in the public eye this past week. 100 Thieves not that bad, but it's more of a little bit of repetition of what we've seen in the past. But J&T, fill everybody in of just what the hell I'm talking about.
Well, so if people didn't know, after TSM's loss to DigNAtas on Friday, their social media manager posted an interesting photo, we will call it, which was, we're not going to throw up the photo on screen for obvious reasons, but the photo was basically, if you know the "Are you winning, son" meme, where it's the little stick figure and it's like the dad coming in the door, and it was, the quote unquote son playing video games, and he was being hung from the ceiling, and that got posted onto TSM's main account after their loss to DigNAtas, and it was quickly deleted soon after, and there was a ton of blow up about it, and how I don't know, it's just a very damning image to be posting on your social media, and just created a lot of negativity towards TSM yet again. It just feels like each and every week TSM is in the news for better or for worse. And more often than not, it's usually for the worse.
Well, when it's something off the rift, it's definitely, well, maybe not definitely, but almost always for the worst when it's off the rift. And this was no different. Um, to his defense, he did say that it was a mistake and like it wasn't what he thought it was. I don't remember his exact wording. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but basically he was saying, I didn't realize it was someone hanging themselves. Regardless of that, here's the thing. It is very well known in the league community that Riot or anything to do with Riot does not like any jokes to do with suicide, naturally, right? This is not anything new. You know that if anybody who plays League knows that if you tell someone to kill themselves in games, you're getting banned, and anything like that, obviously, it comes with what is usually more of a slap on the wrist. In this case, a lot of people thought that he was going to get fired, but he actually didn't get fired for what he did. And me personally, I'm actually glad he didn't get fired. Whether he meant it, whether he knew what it was that he was posting, or whether it was a mistake, I am not one. I really don't like cancel culture. I think I've talked about that before on this podcast. People make mistakes, guys. And I think that regardless of what kind of mistake this was, it was a mistake nonetheless. If it's something that were to reoccur very often, yes, like let this guy go. I think he should be fired if it happens often. But you know what? I feel bad for the guy because clearly he definitely regrets what he did, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not flaming a guy for, his actions and whether or not he thought it was intentional, because it did seem like a very sincere apology in terms of his immediate reactions that he had on social media after taking down the post, and then like another final statement that he posted either a day or two later. I don't exactly remember when it was posted, but it seems like, those weren't his intentions to post that photo to be making a joke out of the situation or to be making a joke of suicide or something like that. So I thought his apology was very sincere. And like you said,
Yeah.
he really owned up to his mistake. And I don't think that he should have been punished too harshly for it. But on the flip side, when you are a part of such a major organization and an organization that has a lot of eyes on it, you do need to be a lot more careful with these kinds of things. Especially like out of the TSM camp, like we're seeing a lot of, I don't know how to phrase it, but like tweets where you're just like typing out your thoughts, or you're just posting the first thing that you can find or comes to mind without really like taking a look at it, whether like you're actually reading out what you're typing or even looking at a picture that you're posting. Like it seems to be a constant problem with TSM. Reginald he said a lot of things, lately on Twitter and even in the past in terms of damning comments towards a party or another team or something like that. And this is sort of the same thing. And I just think that for an organization of TSM's stature, they really need to just be a little more careful on these things. And I know I'm not saying that TSM is the only culprit of this, because there are others, but
Yeah.
when you're in this kind of a position, you really just need to be, hyper focused on the things that you are posting to the world, because it does, it's, I don't know how to say it, but like it just reflects badly on your entire team and your organization.
I also feel bad because like if you're a social media guy, like your job is to be posting all the time, and like there's so many tweets that get a lot of like um well, they're encouraged a lot of time to be edgy. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot of social media managers, Cloud9 specifically, or I guess Portillo's no longer their social media manager. He's something else now. But Portillo for the longest time was Cloud9's social media guy, and he's always doing something controversial, but it's always like looked at in a good way. And so I could see maybe he's trying to be a little bit edgy or something like that. And when you're posting all the time, like you're bound to fuck up at some point, right? Like nonstop. Whereas like with Reggie, like you don't need to be quick. Like a social media manager needs to be quick, and you need to be on top of stuff and posting like right away, to be like in the moment kind of thing. Whereas like I feel like Reggie should have a lot more time to like stop and think about what he's tweeting. But anyways, yeah, it's just regardless, it's bad. They need to get better. I don't think he's going to do anything like that again. I think, like we mentioned, deeply regrets it, and I think we'll move on, and that'll be that. Um, I think Reggie got a fine for his tweet last week that we talked about
He
with
got fined for
Vulcan.
$5,000.
Yeah.
Pretty
Now,
small, but
do we know if TSM social media manager got fined? Do we know about that?
I don't know. I wouldn't
You would have
assume.
to imagine, right?
I don't know. I wouldn't assume so. Maybe internally, but I wouldn't think that the
Or maybe
league would take.
TSM gets fined for it. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think the league would take any action on TSM themselves. I would think that it would either be internally or it wasn't like them you know, talking down upon other players within the league. And that's sort of the case for the Vulcan tweet.
Yeah. And then there was 100 Thieves that decided to make a roster move. And, well, I think some of the fans were a little bit upset about how that went down. You want to fill people in on exactly what happened there?
Yeah, well, everybody should know this, but DeMonte had been subbed out for this weekend's games, and Ryoma was, kind of seems to be getting his second chance in the LCS. Deservedly so, I think, because DeMonte was clearly underperforming, and from the out of the 100 Thieves side, they thought that Ryoma was playing very well in scrims, and I assume they just feel he has more tools in the toolkit for the current meta, it being majority control mages and sort of the roaming mid laners sort of completely falling out of priority, because we saw a ton of that in lock-in. But people were again surprised to find out that there was a roster change being made and no notice being given from 100 Thieves. This is a problem that they've had multiple times in the past with substituting out players kind of on a moment's notice with not a lot of transparency with the fans. The former Medios and Cody Stunt one, and then there was the whole Fake God with Someday and Levi when Levi was on 100 Thieves. But 100 Thieves has had a bunch of problems with quote-unquote transparency to their fans, because a lot of their fans feel sort of left in the dark when all these big roster moves are coming out, and it's not coming from 100 Thieves directly. They're finding out via other parties, and in this case, it was revealed on Twitter that Travis Scafford found out that DeMonte was no longer on the player list for interviews, and Ryoma had suddenly popped up in there. And, the same thing had exactly happened to CLG at the start of the season when they ended up subbing people out there for RJS. And it just, to me, if I'm a fan of an organization, it does kind of suck to hear that, one of your 5 players in your LCS starting roster is getting subbed out, and you're having to hear that through a different source that's, not your own team.
Yeah, and I like that you bring up that it happened to CLG too, because I think they should be equally under whatever the word is.
Scrutiny.
Basically, they should receive the same amount of flame for doing the same thing. But I think the reason why people are so much more sensitive when it comes to 100 Thieves is because, like you mentioned, they have a long history of not being transparent with their fans about what's going on. And it shouldn't be like Travis Scafford tweeting out like, hey guys, by the way, it looks like this guy's being benched because I can ask for an interview with him. Like how does that happen so often? And then Papa Smithy replied, what did he replied something like, what would you have liked to have seen done, Travis, or something like that. And you mentioned JNT, you're like, wait, is Papa trolling? Like, does he actually not know
Yeah,
what we're
I
talking
couldn't
about
tell
here?
if he was being serious or if he was like trolling. Like,
I think he was being serious. I think he was. He must have been by like
yeah,
the rest of the conversation that
yeah.
unfolded after.
Yeah, and I know that Papa Smithy wasn't a part of 100 Thieves when all those previous roster iterations had been going down, like I just mentioned with Cody Sun and Medios in Season 8, and then in Season 9 with like Brandini and Levi and that whole thing towards like Rift Rivals, and like that there was that thing at Rift Rivals and at the start of, or somewhere in the middle of that summer season, and that was in Season 9, but Papa Smithy wasn't a part of that. But you still got to like know what the history of your org is, and
Yeah,
previous issues that fans are still probably like concerned about.
yeah.
And
No,
to
I
sort of
completely
read
agree.
that tweet, like at first glance, I was like, dude, like this has not been too long ago where 100 Thieves was getting major flame about this.
Yep. But yeah, again, it's equal to all the teams. Like this shouldn't be happening time and time again. I think the reason why people aren't upset with CLG is because people have just stopped expecting anything decent out of the org altogether. Maybe that's why. I don't know. But anyways, it's not a good look. It is, to me, in my opinion, it is very simple to just let everyone know if you've made the decision. You should be tweeting out or letting your fans know what's going on. That I don't think that's anything that's too difficult, but that's just my opinion on it.
Yeah, I think are we good to move into our main topic?
Yep,
We'll just get right into it.
let's
So
jump
for
in.
our main topic this week, what we're going to do is, obviously we like to talk about all the teams after the games, because we usually learn a lot of things about them. But what we're going to do for this week's episode is we're going to just take a look at all the teams, their current record, and whether we think that that team is playing better, worse, or equal to that record. Do you want to start from the bottom or the top?
I don't care. Whatever you got. You go ahead.
Start at
I'll
the
let you
bottom because I think we usually start towards the bottom. But
Okay.
we got Golden Guardians up first, a team that I don't think a lot of people had a lot of hope for in the first place. I know after the lock-in tournament, I actually thought that Golden Guardians might end up being like a half decent team and not like the shitters of
Me
the
too.
LCS again. Because I thought some of their players like didn't look too like I don't think like Niles has been god awful. Iconic I
Eesh.
think showed some promise in the lock-in tournament, but really has had no effect. Ablaze Olive has been just like below average, and their bot lane has been, I think, worse than expected. Specifically, newbie. That guy is like he's like right up there with Niles in terms of like worst LCS players. So we both believe that they're playing equal to their record because they're at the bottom. Yeah, not I don't know. There's not a ton to say. This team's not very good.
Man, it feels like talking about Golden Guardians is getting more and more difficult every week because we see the same goddamn thing every week.
Yeah,
I will say I disagree with you though. I've said this before, but I don't think Newbie's been as bad as Niles
dude.
because Niles is on a whole nother level,
I
man.
mean, maybe
He
yeah,
is just
maybe that's the case.
he is like running it down, and this is what we keep talking about every week. But it's like the story's not changing, man. It's just not. I also agree with you though, where you said like at the start of the season we were like, oh, maybe this team's not that bad, and well, yeah, they kind of just are. I said at the start of the season that I expected this team to get 8 wins. I thought that was around where they would get 8 wins over the full from not just spring, like spring and summer out of their 45 games. They are currently on pace for 6. Counting the whole season altogether, after 5 weeks, we are 1/3 of the way through the whole regular season. So they got 2 wins. Or what is that, like 39 losses, I think?
Yes.
It's a lot of losses. But yeah, no, we're not seeing anything that's different out of Golden Guardians, at least not yet. Uh, I hope it changes. Do
Yeah.
I think it will? Not really.
I just wanted to find this stat because when I was watching their game on Sunday, I think it was their game on Sunday. I messaged you because you were watching the games elsewhere, but
Yeah.
not including Golden Guardians' most recent game on Sunday, where Niles was playing Pantheon. He actually got a couple of kills. In his previous 9 games, minus the one on Sunday, he had a scoreline of 1-45.
1 kill, 45 deaths.
Like, how bad is that?
That is like, oh. And it's not like they're just putting him on tanks either. Like they're putting him on a bunch of different stuff and like champions that you can pick up kills on.
Yeah,
But it's not.
that's the thing that I don't really understand with Niles on Golden Guardians is I even said this before in the lock-in tournament at the start of the season. They're putting him on a lot of these carry-oriented champions like a Camille, like a Pantheon, and they just give him no help whatsoever. Like they just expect him to win his matchup, through individual skill, and we've seen already that he's not the best individually skilled player. And other teams just recognize that you can just win the game through top lane by just shitting on Niles. So I would like
Yeah.
moving forward, I would rather see this team just kind of take the fudge approach where they just put him on a tank and say, "Good luck, you're going to go down 20 to 30 CS and we hope you're going to be relevant in team fights." But the main problem that I just see with Golden Guardians is like while I was hyping up Iconic a little bit earlier on in the season, Iconic's not doing a whole lot. Sure, he's not like
Mm-hmm.
running it down and griefing games, which is good and which is very important, but he's also not getting a lot done. Like he kind of just full clears his camps. He takes some early dragons, which is completely fine, and like that's fine to do if you just want to full clear and do early dragons and like use your lane pressure. But you got to be able to like do stuff when the enemy jungler is just way more active than you. I think I remember hearing a stat on broadcast that Iconic has the lowest jungle proximity in the league. It was maybe this was during the broadcast, and I don't know which day it was, so the stats probably different by now. But I think it was somewhere around 12%. And it basically that just tells you that like only 12% of the time in the early game is he actually going to other lanes and attempting to affect them, which is just
Yeah.
very low in general. And when you're such a bad team, you're not going to win through individual skills, so you need to actually make plays and be active in the early game to get a potential advantage to snowball through, because it's very unlikely that you're going to win through proper objective control and team fighting against a lot of these better teams.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say on Golden Guardians is that I do know their coach Enero has been very vocal about how he just wants them to try to make plays. He doesn't care if they run it down as long as they're trying to make something happen. He doesn't want them to sit back and do nothing and lose the game. And so by that note, maybe Niles is popping off.
Oh,
Like
Jesus.
I don't know, but at least, well, I don't even want to say at least he's making something happen because I don't know. I don't know what to say. I just know that Inero is much more happier with them trying to make plays happen. And to your point, if Iconic isn't making anything happen, I'm sure that that's what Inero wants him to change. I think he probably wants him to be less afraid to make something happen or less afraid to die while trying to make something happen instead. But anyways, that's my piece on Golden Guardian.
I think Niles got like 2 kills in our game on Sunday, so hey, he's boosting
Yeah.
that KD a little bit.
Stay tuned next week for when we try to find a new way to talk about how bad Golden Guardians is. They're
Okay.
like this year's CLG, honestly. They're like this year Golden Guardians is what CLG was last year, where it's like the same week or every week it was like the same thing that we would talk about, and it just felt bad. But anyways, who's next?
Speaking of CLG, we got CLG up next. We both have them better than their current record. This weekend pretty much just showed that this team is improving and they are looking better. They went 2-1 on the week. They beat Team Liquid and they beat
Immortals, right?
Immortals on Friday. Yes, that's correct. And ended up losing to FlyQuest on Saturday, which put them out of playoff contention, which is pretty unfortunate considering they looked pretty good against Immortals and then looked really bad against FlyQuest. And, kind of like smashed Team Liquid on Sunday.
Counter logic, man.
It doesn't make any sense.
It is counter logic gaming. That is exactly how it works. I don't know. They looked good, man. Especially Broxa. I think Brox is starting to look really good. I'm so happy that Broxa beat TL. You remember last week when we were doing our predictions?
We literally said like we didn't think it was gonna happen. We were like, is Broxa gonna beat Team Liquid in his first game back? And we were like, not gonna happen, and it happened.
You made the point. You were like, hey, it's actually Brox's first game against TL, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then we both were like, that doesn't change how we feel whatsoever.
Maybe he got extra motivated.
Yeah, I'm happy that CLG is able to pick up some dubs. I don't want them to be the bottom of the league team anymore, and it definitely doesn't look like they're going to be. I think also Finn's starting to look pretty damn good too. He had a really rough start to the season, and he's starting to pick it up. So we're starting to see some good things.
Yeah, and even if you kind of ignored this weekend and even just took a look at CLG's record prior to this week and their games prior to this week, I think I still would have said that this team is performing better than their record, just due to the fact that their early games have been so strong, but they have struggled in the mid and late game. I mean, even in week 4, I think they went 1-2 in week 4, but they still had some pretty solid games and games where they were in it to the very end, but again, just couldn't pull it together. And it definitely is a lot better to see a team, like you said, that is active in the early game, making plays, and again, maybe they don't translate it all the way into the win, as opposed to a team like Golden Guardians who just seems to be very AFK and still loses.
I just think it's easier to fix late game blunders than it is to get leads in the early game. I think it's a lot more, it's a better sign to be good early and bad late than the reverse, in my opinion. And so I think CLG's starting to fix some of their late game blunders, and I think that's why they're starting to close out some games. Maybe not as many as they should, but I mean, clearly this weekend they were able to close out some games, and so they're looking really good. I will say Pobelter absolutely ran it down against FlyQuest, though.
He ran it and then smurfed it the next game on Lucian.
Yeah, I think I'm thinking he probably was the sole reason why they lost the game against FlyQuest. I'm just trying to think if that's a little bit too extreme. Maybe not. He definitely was bad. I could say that. He was definitely a part of the reason why they lost. I don't know if it's fair to completely throw the whole loss on his shoulders, but he was probably the biggest component of why they lost that game. But regardless, he turned it right around against TL, and, well, that was pretty nice.
Yeah. All right, next up we got FlyQuest. You have them equal to the record. I have them worse than their record. I'll let you start.
I had them worse. I changed it to equal.
Okay.
I did.
Interesting.
I don't know. To me, they're playing like a 5-10 team. I think Jose Dioto's still looking good. I think Johnson's good and bad. And then I think the rest of the roster is mostly bad. Licorice looks good every once in a while, but I think Diamond's still too heavy.
And to me also, bad. I think Palafox is just it's not been very good either. I think Palafox has his like pop-off games. Like he had a good Yone game this week. He had a great Silas game last week against TSM and had a good I remember his first week 1 performance against TSM. But if you like eliminate those like couple pop-off games that he's had this season, he's actually like really bad. Like in terms of the rest of his
I don't
games.
like the if you
I
eliminate
know.
him times he's good, then he's bad.
But
you know?
it's while I do agree that like you can't just say that, but it's more like, some mid laners, they have their pop-off games, they have their int games, and they just have a bunch of average games. It's kind of with Palafox, he doesn't really have those games in the middle. It's just like a few good and a lot really bad. And obviously I don't think FlyQuest is Palafox is the sole purpose for me rating FlyQuest so lowly. It's more that is even in their recent performances, they've not looked very good. They're 3-6 in their last 9 games. That's over the span of the last 3 weeks. I don't know. I just don't think this team is very good. Like you said, I think Jose Diodo is really the only player that has shown me like anything this year. Johnson has been like very hot and cold in my opinion. Licorice has been like super hot and cold, and I don't think Palafox and Diamond, like you just mentioned, I think they're just straight up heavy. And so it's just really hard to like the only times we're ever seeing FlyQuest successful is when all 5 players are doing well. Like with a lot of the teams in the rest of the league, you can still be somewhat of a successful team and pick up some wins if you have one struggling player. Like in Cloud9, we're seeing that. We have Fudge, who's been struggling. With TSM, we're seeing, you pick your choice of Spica as of late or Sword Art early on in terms of players that are struggling. Even on Team Liquid, we have one player, Tactical, who is clearly struggling on that team. But the team is still able to find relative success. But for me, it just feels like with FlyQuest, it's like one person, like 4 people are drowning, and one person has to come like lift the rest of the people up. And more often than not, that's usually Jose Diodo.
Well, and you have to also think though about like all those other rosters, or most of those other rosters at least that you mentioned, they all have the 4 other players that can carry someone who's looking pretty bad. Like Team Liquid, if somebody struggles, I really expect the other 4 players to be able to perform at a high level. I don't really expect that out of FlyQuest, not really, anyways. And also, I think Jose Diodo was the reason why they beat CLG. The one Flash Lilia play, that was like a clutch play. That was a clutch play that won.
It was like
the
a
game.
4-man sleep, and like it was nice.
Oh, I think we're talking about a different play, but maybe that speaks to how there's more than one play that he's popping off. I was thinking of the one where he got a 2-man sleep and he caught Broxa and Wild Turkey.
Maybe it was in a different game, but I just remember he had like a really gross like flash 4-man Q into sleep.
Yeah. Anyways, he's looking pretty good. Well, the one thing I want to touch on before we move on though is there was the interaction with the Azir bug that we're not sure if it's a bug, but it was kind of a bug that everyone was really confused about when we were watching it. For those that didn't see, basically Azir ulted Aurelia, and Aurelia just went right through the Azir ult. It looked like a bug. Now, I don't know whether it was or not, because you had Revenge tweet, and his tweet basically said that sometimes Aurelia can buffer CC with her Q, right? Is that what he said? And so that it may have made sense that he went right through the Azir ulti.
Yes.
I don't know. But also on Doublelift's co-stream, say on Friday, because I was watching, it was one of the Doublelift Media's co-streams.
It was on Friday because they were playing. C9 was playing FlyQuest on Friday.
I couldn't understand exactly how Doublelift, or what exactly Doublelift was saying, but to me it sounded like he was saying the league did say it was a bug, but he wasn't too clear with it. And so I just want to let people know it may have been a bug, but it's also maybe a perfect explanation from Revenge as to why that play happened. Regardless, pretty much everyone agrees you got to pause the freaking game when that happens. If there's anything that looks fishy, call pause. Like, let the refs decide whether it's a bug or not. If it's not a bug, then you keep playing, and you move on. But like, you can't be afraid to pause the game there. If something really fishy, if it looks like an obvious bug in the game, just call pause, man. It's not the end of the world. That looked really weird, and I'm really surprised FlyQuest didn't pause that.
Yeah, one thing I just wanted to add real quick, because one thing we're going to talk about later is the patch notes, because we found out that LCS is playing on patch 11.5. But when I was reading the patch notes before this episode, I actually saw something. They did a hot fix on March the 4th, which would have actually been a day before that Cloud9 FlyQuest game, and it says Azir fixed a bug where Azir's ultimate would fail to hit the champions behind him, even if they are visually in the ability's range.
Yeah. Now,
so that makes
also...
well, that just makes me think that it probably was a bug, because if they had just fixed this bug on patch 11.5, that could have easily been the bug, because these teams are playing on 11.4 on the current LCS week that they were playing on 11.4.
Yeah, that to me, that sounds like it makes sense. But I think there is like a list of bugs that is given out to each team, and it's like, hey, like just so you know, this is a bug that hasn't been fixed yet, but the champion's not disabled, so you need to be ready for that to happen. I don't know if that's how that works, but that was the idea that I was getting. I think Medios and Double If were talking about it, that there's like a list of bugs that like each team is made aware of going in. I don't know. So yeah.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I thought that was really interesting as well. But I still think if that's a bug, like to me, that's a really significant bug. Disable the champion, man, or fix it beforehand. But I guess they couldn't. Anyways, yeah, I just wanted to let people know about that. It's possible it's a bug. It's possible it wasn't. I don't know. If someone knows, let us know. By the way, if someone knows, like if the LCS did like tweet out like their official like, hey, it was a bug. Whoops,
I didn't
let
see
us know if
anything, so
someone knows.
I'm not sure.
I didn't
feel
see
like I
anything
would have.
either,
I feel
but,
like I would have saw it if that was the case. But
anyways, let's move on.
We got
Who's
Immortals up next. I had them as better. You had them as equal.
Yeah.
My reasoning for putting them better is, well, I mean, my kind of metric for deciding if teams are better or worse is kind of looking at their season as a whole, and then just kind of taking a deeper dive into like their last 3 weeks. And in the last 3 weeks, Immortals is 5-4. That puts them above 500 on their last 9 games. I think that makes their overall record on the season 7-8, and they're just 1 game now out of a playoff spot, right behind EG, who they actually beat on Friday. And again, I think I've said this in the past, but maybe I'm a little bit biased just in the fact that I'm kind of like an Immortals fan. But to me, it feels like this team is getting better in the areas that were issues for them prior. We saw Raze and Destiny have like, I think, their first strong weekend this week.
Yep.
Raze had just a really good week in general. He had that Vayne game against was it Dig? No, he had the Vayne game against. It was against EG, right?
Evil Genius? Yeah.
He had his Vayne game against EG, and then he had a good game on Sunday. I don't remember who he was playing. I think he was playing Tristana, but I remember he had a good game.
Yes, it was Tristana.
Yeah, but
his Vayne game, he trolled a couple of times.
His late game was good, and like on Vayne, like, well, late game.
He still had a good game. I don't want people to think, but like there was a couple times that he trolled a little bit, and so I actually think like they are playing like around 500, and 7-8 to me is the kind of like that's what I look at when I see this team. I want to remind people that this is still a development roster, and to me, if you're playing about 500 and your record is about even, that's pretty good. And so I think that they are playing equal to how good they have been. We've hyped them up a lot. I will also say that maybe we hyped up Insanity a little bit.
Yeah, Insanity didn't have a great weekend this week.
He didn't have a great weekend. No, he didn't. He admitted it himself on Twitter. He was like, yeah, like I got carried this weekend or something like that. But overall, I think the team is okay. And I think that that's something they should be more than happy with, considering that they are a development roster, like we continue to say.
Yeah, I also think, I just want to add, I think Xerxes has been playing a lot better. I think he was kind of an unknown going into this season, whether or not he's just there to sort of coach up these younger players, or if he's going to be there to like actually be a strong jungle and somebody you can play through. And I think he's been having a great last couple weeks and had a pretty good weekend this week. The main issue that I still have with this team is like Revenge. He had a great start to the LCS with that super strong game against Team Liquid right at the start. But with Raze and Destiny sort of playing well this weekend, it still kind of leaves Revenge as, again, a bit of a question mark in terms of, is this guy going to come back to this form that we saw at the start, or if he's just going to continue to be like a bottom tier top laner?
He looked okay on the Aatrox. He made some nice plays, some pretty bad plays. I'm not too cold on Revenge, but I do agree with you that he can look a little bit better, and he's one of the reasons why I still have them like equal. I think the team is pretty good in general. I don't have him playing pretty good, and so I think he's one of the reasons why they are slightly below 500, if I'm being completely honest. But lots of room for him to grow still, and I'm still cheering for Revenge, and I'm still cheering for Immortals. It's nice to see them compete in the league and beat some of the teams ahead of them in the standings.
Yep. Good to go. Next one.
Yep.
We got EG coming up next. I had them as equal.
Equal, you went. Oh, whoa! I see.
You had them as worse. I can go first if you want.
Absolutely.
Because
go for it.
while my logic isn't necessarily like insanely good, it makes sense. And
Okay,
it's
feed
as
me. What you got?
it's as follows: would you call Evil Geniuses a coin flip team?
I would have a couple weeks ago. I mean, okay, yeah, sure.
Okay.
They're a coin flip team. Go ahead, continue.
And their record is 8-7,
Uh-huh.
pretty close to 50%. There you
That's
go.
it.
And
That's
that,
that's all
like,
you need.
well, here's the thing: they're definitely not better than their record. So it was just between, are they equal or are they worse?
Oh, I
And-
would have freaking lost it if you said that
Oh
they were
no,
better
like,
than their record.
well, there was no chance that that was in the equation. But basically, the way that I see it and the way that their players are kind of performing, Impact, he's pretty much doing well all the time. He's kind of
Yeah.
out of the equation. Svenskeren is either hard trolling the game or playing all right. Jizuke is either hard trolling the game or carrying the game. And Ignar is either inting on his engages or he's getting off decent engages. And Definitely's kind of just there. So
Yeah,
basically,
Definitely's always just there.
it's just like the way that I view this team is a lot of like they're just there or they're inting or they're carrying. And it just like that
They're
all
over
like
the place.
if you just like mix that up all into a pot, it's just like you don't know what the fuck you're gonna get. Coin flip, 50% win rate, and that's why I went with equal.
Yeah, their games are fun. I'll say that. I think Svenskeren's a little bit too bad
Oh,
for me
yeah,
to
man.
give them the equal.
He is griefing
Because
it.
you mentioned that he's either running it down or equal or what was the word? Whatever the hell. Or average. I think that he has not been average very often. I think especially as of late,
Oh
he's
yeah.
been
Oh,
looking
Jesus.
pretty damn bad. Do you think he plays Mundo again? Something tells me he doesn't like Mundo. I get the
I don't
feeling.
really understand the Mundo pick too much, to be honest. It kind of feels like just the worst version of Udyr, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It just feels like the worst version of Udyr. It has like maybe a slightly better late game because you like heal infinitely, but Udyr kind of just naturally also does that, and especially when you comp him in with champions like a Karma or a Lulu or a Seraphine. So to me, Mundo doesn't really give any benefits in the late game that he might otherwise get in a vacuum when you compare the two champions. And it just has a straight up worse early game. The Cleaver is just a shittier version of the Bear Slap. He doesn't have like Udyr has like the turtle stance for the HP and the shielding, and Udyr actually has like a lot more damage with the Phoenix stancing and the Tiger stance. So it just seems like the worst version of Udyr to me, and I don't understand why teams are playing it. It has like a sub 50% win rate across the world, and even a worse win rate across all major regions. So I'm not really understanding why Mundo's.
I don't know if I like that because well, I guess I want to ask, do you know what the sample size is? Because I don't think there's been a lot of. I
No,
know
there
I've seen
hasn't.
Mundo in other regions.
I looked
but
at
I
the
don't think there's been a
stats.
lot.
The only region where the champion is actually doing well is in Brazil. It has like 11 games,
Huh.
and it's like a 56% win rate because I think it's 6-11 or something like that. But in all other regions, all other major regions being LCS, LEC, LPL, LCK, I don't think it's been played at LPL at all. It's I think 50% in LCK, and it's worse than 50% in NA and EU. In EU, it's actually really bad or something. I think it's like 2-6 or something like that.
It always matters who's playing it, though,
It
right? Like,
it
that
does,
kinda
but
matters.
I did look at the champion. It just seems like it's just underwhelming for the most part.
I don't know how to judge it because it's not like Svenskeren's only running it down on Mundo. He's running it down on a lot of different champions. And so it's like I don't know, like I can't look at Svenskeren's Mundo and decide whether I like or dislike the champion. And I haven't seen enough of it in other regions to really have a strong opinion. I don't think he's gonna want to play it anymore. I don't think he looked too good on it. But anyways, yeah, I think we are not seeing the same Svenskeren that we're used to seeing. I hope that he can turn around. I still say the same thing about Ignar. I just think the team's looking really, really bad right now. Yeah, Impact is in Elo hell at the moment. Jizuke, Jizuke is. I
Man.
love watching that guy. Let's say that.
Dude,
His Oriana ultis were actually kind of bad this
double
week.
lift
He had
was
the East one to like the Baron. He had a nice one, like you Oriana ult the Baron, but then they take a fight right after, and I'm like, if you used like some of your ultis to secure the Baron, like why don't you just reset right after? You don't need to. You don't need to try to engage a fight right after. And I think they threw the game against Dig because of that. But anyways,
yeah. Double lift
yeah,
was like hard flaming.
to me they're definitely worse.
Double lift was hard flaming Jizuke on his Ghost stream when we were watching because
Oh yeah.
That Oriana game was really bad. Like he was
Mm.
whiffing ults left, right, and center. He was doing like one man ults on like a tank, and like or just wasting his ult early in the fight. And especially on Oriana, like if you're using your ultimate early on in a team fight, like Oriana kind of serves that like blitzcrank purpose in like a game where you always have to be nervous about the big spell. For Blitzcrank, that's Sook, and for Oriana, that's grouping up on that ball. Because
Yeah.
especially like during your hectic mid game and late game team fights and objective control, you can like sneak that ball out of nowhere and just instantly blow up 3 people. We literally saw that with Jizuke last week, where he got a 3-man shockwave onto 2 carries. I think plus either was the 2 carries plus like the support. I think
Yeah, he just one shot them all.
he one shot them all in one
Yeah, that was
alt W.
gross.
And
Yeah.
this week, we pretty much just we saw him wasting Shockwave on repeat, basically the entire game. And when you don't have that threat of Shockwave, it just makes the enemy team just allowed to play the game so much easier because they can walk forward into your team. You can sort of kind of group up a little bit. You're not as nervous about getting wombo comboed. But yeah,
I thought his
Jizuke.
echo was kind of bad too, honestly.
Yeah, man, like Jizuke is like a good Echo player. I've been saying I want to see more
Supposed to be.
Echo into these control mages, and I was happy when I saw that he picked it into control mage, and he kind of didn't do very well. Also,
it's gonna be EG. Sorry, go ahead.
well, what I wanted to also say was I thought he just picked Echo in a really bad spot because he picked Echo into Renekton, Skarner, and was it Tom Kench, or it was like it was some aid support that Echo doesn't like playing against. This was in the 100 Thieves game on Friday, but he picked it into Renekton, Echo, and another champ in support that had CC. And you don't really want to be picking Echo into a ton of CC because you're not allowed to like push the boundaries on that champ as much. You usually have to like end up using a Zanyas or using an ult earlier than you'd like to. And I don't like picking Echo into like big heavy CC.
Yeah. Anyways, what I was gonna say was EG and IMT are the 2 teams that it looks like they're gonna be fighting for the last playoff spot too. Just to highlight that.
Oh,
And
we got one more maybe.
well, yeah, maybe. But the thing is, 100 Thieves. Well, let's talk about 100 Thieves. 100 Thieves, they have 9 wins already, right?
Yes,
So
9 and 6.
if they go 9-9, you should still be able to make top 6, right?
Well, no, well, technically, if like Immortals wins,
All 3?
I think, what's
I don't know what the tiebreaker is.
100 Thieves still has to play Immortals, I believe.
Ooh.
Therefore, if 100 Thieves were to go 0-3, and at the minimum, Immortals went 2-1, they would tiebreak 100 Thieves for potentially a playoff seed if EG were to win enough games, if they were to go 2-1 and therefore have 10 wins. So 100 Thieves still has a chance to not make playoffs if they go 0-3.
And we could both definitely agree that they are worse than their record.
Oh yeah, 100 Thieves.
They went into the weekend 8-4, and they did not look like an 8-4 team at all. Like Mayday, we're going down, man. I don't know what's going on with 100 Thieves.
This team looks horrible.
Ryoma's this year looked really, really bad. Like so here's the thing. I don't think he had the greatest of front lines to play that kind of champion. Like you want to be able to sit on the back line and use your soldiers to poke out and do, burst a lot of damage. And they didn't exactly have the greatest front line. I think they just had Gnar. But even still, he was positioning really poorly. And like he was the first one dead in a lot of team fights. And I thought he looked really bad on the Azir. I didn't think he had the worst weekend overall, but definitely that Azir game was like, this ain't looking much better than Demonte.
Yeah, no, I didn't think he had a bad weekend at all. I think he had a bad game against TSM on Saturday, but I thought his game against EG, where he was playing Oriana, was pretty good, and I thought his Silas game against Golden Guardians was really good as well. So for me, the whole Demonte Ryoma substitution definitely was an upgrade for me in terms of what I've seen recently from Demonte. And if I was 100 Thieves, I would probably stick with Ryoma going into this last weekend. I would find it a bit surprising to see them only sub him in for 1 week and kind of like just basically take away a week's worth of practice time for Demonte if you're only going to sub him in for these 3 games. So to me, it just wouldn't make a lot of sense to sub out Ryoma after what I would consider a good performance this weekend. And also, having to switch up your team dynamics once again to put Demonte back in.
I think one of the issues that you have is that it's like Demonte has looked so bad lately that it's like it's almost impossible to not look better, right? Like I don't
Yeah.
think DeMonte's a bad mid laner, by the way. He looks really bad lately. I don't know what's going on, but we've seen him play for quite some time now. We know that he's better than how he's playing, but he's just playing really fucking bad right now. And yeah, so obviously, like with that, it's not really difficult for Ryoma to be an upgrade. But Ryoma, in my opinion, still needs to be a little bit better, especially on the Azir. But yeah, like to your point, it wasn't like he was only bad just because he had a bad Azir game. He didn't look too bad in the other games. Closer, also kind of yikes.
Dude, to be honest, like when I
What
originally
happened?
saw that tier list from Mark Z where he had Closer as the 8th rated jungler, I was like, hold up a second. Like 8th seems a little bit too low. Honestly, he's in
Starting
that.
to make a little bit of sense, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
like I don't. I personally wouldn't put him down at 8th, but I would definitely say he's not in the top half anymore.
Yeah.
He's like
Well,
at the
from what we've seen
highest.
this year, definitely
At the
not.
highest, he'd be 6th in my books.
Yeah. Another head scratcher, honestly, because this guy was talked about as being one of the best junglers
Dude,
last year.
I'm just thinking about this. Man, jungle is actually kind of interesting because I feel like there's a lot of good junglers on underperforming teams.
Hmm.
Like for me,
Like Cersei,
yeah,
like Jose Diodo,
yeah, I would not put
Broxa.
Spica. I would not put Spica, and I would not put Closer in the top half of the league, and I would probably put Jose Diodo and Cersei above those two.
I don't know. I thought Spica had a much better weekend. I agree with you that Spica hasn't looked as good this year, but I think for the most part, I think I liked how he played this weekend. Now I wish I could go back and watch all the games, but he didn't stand out as being bad to me this weekend. Actually, there was one game that I thought he looked really good. Which one was that?
Well, he definitely didn't look very good in the C9 game.
I don't know. There was one game that I thought that he actually played really well. I remember tweeting about it, but now I can't remember what game. I watch too much League of Legends to remember, and I have goldfish brain. I can't remember what the hell's going on. But anyways, yeah, 100 Thieves, big uh-oh. Also, who he still looks bad. I will say, I think FBI still looks good.
Yeah,
He's still looking mighty fine in the bot lane.
FBI is the only player on this team who I think is like still playing at a good level.
You know what else? I actually thought that Someday looked good on the Gnar, but it seemed like they weren't ever on the same page. I think Someday still should be better than he has performed, but specifically in the Gnar game, I think that was against TSM. He had a really nice ulti. I think he had a 5-man ulti the one time, but Closer on Lilia didn't have ultimate. And so like you need to communicate that. Like if you're gonna go in, like you need to have the Lily ultimate to follow up. And Azir was already dead because Ryoma walked up forward and just got picked off. So it was like it was a really nice ulti, but it just wasn't at the right time. And I feel like maybe when I watch plays like that, it makes me think that there's probably some communication issues that are going on in the team. Can I say that for sure? No, but that's what I thought I saw when I saw that specific play. He gets a 5-man Gnar ulti, and it just doesn't mean shit.
Yeah, and that's honestly the one thing that has just been so baffling with this whole 100 Thieves roster is because when they were on Golden, like when this team or these 4 players were on Golden Guardians, the main reason why Golden Guardians ended up being so successful at the tail end of summer was that like their team play was just so good. And it just feels like their team play right now on 100 Thieves is like not good at all. It just feels like they've completely lost their identity of like what they like to do in the early game, like in terms of like getting closer on an aggressive early game champion and actually making plays around the map, whether that's diving top lane and bring up a mid lane roam or whether that's 4-man diving bot lane. And again, maybe like this team is just getting completely like their read on the meta is just totally off because they were so used to having these roam heavy mid laners that were able to just get easy prio early on to the game and then take your mid laner into a side lane for, you know, a mismatch dive. And again, like maybe the meta is just causing a lot of troubles for 100 Thieves, but it just seems like I was just talking about, like other players are just performing like so much worse individually. Like this was supposed to be Someday's moment. Like he finally has a good team around him. He's supposed to be the carry on this team, and it just feels like this team is not playing around him whatsoever. Like there's a ton of Someday fans and a ton of people who believe that Someday is one of the best players like in the LCS should he have the right tools around him. And in terms of like his comparison to the rest of the top laners in the league, there are many seasons where there's a good percentage of people who believe that Someday is the best top laner in the league in terms of like all pro voting or whatever. And year after year, people are like, oh, Someday snubbed and whatnot in terms of like his finishing in the All-Pro standings. And this is like, I've never been one who was on that side of the conversation with Someday. And this year is really not helping this argument for him because he should be playing a lot better. And yes, while the team is struggling, he needs to like step up individually and either whether that's like him himself saying, hey, we need to put more resources into my hands, or just like just getting the team to play around him, or just improving his individual play just in general, because he's getting like, it's just like not like he should be shitting on players and he's just not. He's just either there or he's losing.
Yeah, no, I agree. Not much more for me to say about 100 Thieves. I'm scared and I'm sad because I thought that they were going to be another one of our top tier teams, and they're just not.
Yeah, this was like after the lock-in tournament, like this was a team that like people had confidence in and were like, okay, we actually have like maybe another top team in the league to rival like your C9, your TL, and your TSMs. And at this rate, they will be a quick 3-0 sweep in the playoffs on their current form, in my opinion.
Yeah, I hope Ryoma starts to look better. I hope the one thing that's different for this year is that Ryoma doesn't have as much pressure as being an import anymore. I hope that that can help him play a little bit better. I don't know if that has an effect on him or not, but I mean that could be something that's different, right? You're no longer taking up an import slot, so people aren't hating you as much. I know Aka got a bunch of flame for taking up an import slot and running it down. I think Ryoma was kind of the same, but anyways, that's just a little side thought. Who's next? Team Liquid, right?
Yeah, we got Team Liquid up next. I had them as equal. You had them as better, so I'll let you go first on this one.
Yeah, I went back and forth on this one. So the reason why I actually put them as better is because I do actually think they're still playing good. I know a lot of people would be like, but they lost to CLG. Sometimes you got to give the team, like the worst team, credit for when they play well. And I actually thought that CLG played pretty good against Team Liquid. That doesn't mean Team Liquid wasn't without any mistakes. Jensen, I remember face checking the try brush in the top lane again. He did that last week, I think, as well. And some of these mistakes that they're making are uncharacteristic, but ultimately, I still think TL's playing pretty well. Alfari's still looking really good. He makes some mistakes every now and then, but for the most part, he's doing pretty well, especially against C9. I think he solo killed
and
Fudge, which isn't really a big surprise, but he also solo killed Perks as well.
In my opinion, Alfari 1v9 that game for Team Liquid. I think if he doesn't like get those 2 solo kills, like C9 probably wins that game. And it's not even because like he solo killed them and like that's the reason why. It was more because in both of those positions, like TL was down in terms of like map pressure. Like when he solo killed Perks in the side lane, like Cloud9 at that time was like up 3,000 gold, and I think Drag was like spawning, and so C9 had like got the first 2 Drakes and then lost the next Mountain Drake because of Perks dying in the side lane, and that just really like when you're playing up against a comp like Cloud9's where they're so reliant on getting ahead in the early game and stacking early dragons and using that as a win condition, when you're able to just like shut that down, get a pick, and get 1 Drake back in return, it's so important for you being able to stall out the game and having the better like late game comp. And Team Liquid just loves to play late game in general, so that was just super important, even though like the actual solo kill might not have been like the play that was like the reason. And the other one, when he just solo kills Fudge in the side lane when Cloud9 is doing Baron, was just like absolutely huge, because like Cloud9 is kind of like flipping Baron at this point because they recognize that their comp is super down, and if they get a pick and they can get Baron, it pretty much puts them back into the game. And Alfari just says, nope, I'm going to solo kill you, and then I'm going to TP and kill you all, which is what he pretty much did, and kind of like sealed the game for Team Liquid. And it just feels like, in my opinion, I think Alfari is the best player in the LCS. If I had to pick a player and be like, who is, and then again, I wouldn't say that necessarily translates to like him being the MVP of the split, because if I had to pick MVP, I would still pick Blabber. I would still pick Blabber. But if we're just saying who is the best player in the LCS, I would say Alfari.
I think it's close. I think I'd still go with Blabber. Just I think he's had more of an impact, but that is an interesting thought, at the very least. I want to think about that one a little bit more. I think I still go Blabber though. But let's talk about the bot lane a little bit. Tactical kind of ran it down last week. He still got caught out again this week against Cloud9 randomly. I don't know what he's doing over there. There was no one nearby.
He needs the Raptors, man.
Yeah. Oh man. With that said, I think he still had an okay weekend. I didn't think that he was all bad. It wasn't all doom and gloom. He had a blunder, and that happens. I don't think it should keep happening. It's happening a lot, but overall, he's still doing pretty well. The bot lane is doing pretty well altogether. Core JJ looked pretty good. Actually, I think it was pretty much Core JJ's fault why CLG lost their first blood
Yeah.
record. Yeah. Oh, that was so sad, wasn't it?
Dude, like a funny
That was one of
yeah.
my favorite records ever, man. CLG, awful team. First blood, 14 out of 14 games. What?
Yeah, so
And rip.
this was the first game that CLG didn't get first blood, and it's like one of the few games that actually won this split against Team Liquid. But a funny stat that actually came out before this weekend's matches was was basically how CLG has acquired first blood in all of their games when they had a 2-10 record at the time. But you actually had, in terms of all the teams in the LCS, they actually had a negative win rate in terms of getting first blood. Like if you got first blood in the game, you had a 48.3% chance of winning the game, and that was because CLG was getting first blood all the time and had 10 losses. So I just thought it was a really funny stat, and one that like I remember got to like pretty high up on Reddit just because of like how hilarious it is that you have a worse chance of winning the game if you got first blood, mainly because CLG is skewing the data.
Well, and CLG and TL contributed to that even more in the game because TL got first blood, but ultimately lost
Yeah.
the game. So they're just contributing to that stat even more. I want to talk a little bit about Santorin because you and I had said that. Well, I think not just you and I, but a lot of people agreed that he would have a lot more impact on games with the patch 11.4 coming live. I wouldn't say we've seen it all that much just yet. I don't think Santorin's been bad, but I think we can expect a little bit more out of Santorin just from how good we've seen him be in the past. And so he's another guy that like I want to see him step it up a little bit. I think he could step it up. I think Jensen could step it up, and I think Tactical can step it up. 3 players on this team that are still good, but we know them to be great. At least maybe not Tactical, but the other 2 for sure, right?
Yeah, I think in my opinion, I think Santorin he's just slightly lower than his expected level, I thought, coming into the season. I wasn't expecting Santorin to just become this insane jungler that was going to like completely take over the league, but I did think that he was going to have like a little bit more impact, and maybe we're just seeing like, well, we did see the best season of his career in Season 10 Summer on FlyQuest, and we're kind of just seeing like a lesser version of that. And who knows if Santorin can like get back to that level, but I still think he's doing a pretty solid job all around in terms of what Team Liquid likes to do. Yes, I would like Team Liquid to get a little more active in the early game in terms of, what they like to accomplish, and rather than preying on the enemy team's mistakes, making your own plays and making your own things happen, because that is what is necessary on the international stage. You can't just sit back and punish enemy mistakes at MSI or at Worlds, because it simply is a rare occurrence that teams are making a lot of these early game mistakes like a lot of the teams in the LCS do. So, well, I do think that Team Liquid has a lot of room to grow and room to improve. For me, they're not at that level quite yet, which is why I have them as equal, because they have dropped a lot of games to bottom tier teams. They dropped to CLG, they dropped to Immortals earlier, and they're just straight up kind of throwing games thanks to Tactical. They lost that TSM game because Tactical got caught out 2 times at really poor moments into the game. And while I do think that they are still a strong team, I think they do have a lot of room to grow. And at their current record and form, I would say it's about equal.
Yeah,
but it's close. It's very close.
No, but when I think about it more, I actually think I probably should have gone with equal, because thinking about how they are playing, I think they are playing like a 9-6 team. I think I got a little bit ahead of myself, and maybe there's a little bit of bias just because the team is supposed to be really good, that maybe I'm giving them too much credit. Upon reflection, I think I actually made a mistake there. I think they have been playing like a 9-6 team more than a 10-5 or 11-4 kind of thing. But anyways. DigNAtas, right?
Yeah, we got DigNAtas up next. Just give me a sec, I'll pull it up. But you have them as worse, actually, than their 10-5 record, and I had them as equal. I thought that was very interesting when I saw that.
Yeah, because so don't get me wrong, I'm fired up. This team is an all-NA roster. They're 10-5. They're in a playoff spot for sure. They're looking pretty good. I don't think they're looking 10-5 good. I think that all 3 of the games this weekend they could have easily lost. Yeah, EG threw their game at Baron against. Actually, EG threw against them quite a few times, if I remember right. And then Golden Guardians should have been able to close out the game. I think they had Elder. They got 2 picks. They were in top lane. Do you remember what play I'm talking about?
Nope.
They had 2 picks. I think Dardoch went down, and I think it was Aframu that went down. and then there was a sleep that was landed on to Fake God. And I think that you got to jump on him at that point. Stixay threw, so he slept. Stixay is playing Senna, and he threw his W at Saligo and missed instead of following up on the slept target that they could have just nuked. With the Elder buff there, I think you kill him, and now you have 3 guys dead. You're at the inhibitor. Like, you just close out the game there. And they were too slow to pull the trigger. Like, I remember Freak saying that it was pretty bad coordination on Golden Guardian's side, and I completely agree. They should have closed the game out there and won the game. But I mean, they found a way to throw it, and we've seen them do that a lot before. So I'm super excited that Dig is winning a lot of their games. But again, they could have lost all 3. They could have lost all 3. Even, was it TSM? Even TSM kind of threw against them this weekend. So it's like they had a 3-0 weekend, and I'm happy. But that wasn't a great 3-0, I would say.
Yeah, I do think it's hard to say because while I do think DigNAtas, they do have a lot of close games, which can be exciting and makes for exciting games. They're winning those games, which I think is just the most important part. Is that they are, they do feel a little bit more coordinated. Like, I'm getting like old CLG vibes from this team. They don't have the best individual players, but what they're really good at is just like their team fighting and their team play. And I think their drafting has been pretty decent as well. I know Dardoch is sort of on he's not really doing his A to Z jungle challenge as much anymore. But I really do think that this team's team fighting is actually pretty good in the late game. It was definitely like I was kind of in between equal or worse, but kind of how we were talking about with CLG earlier and how, especially early on in the season, it's difficult to judge them when they're doing so well in the early game, but then can't really get it together in the mid and late game. What I do like from DigNAtas, and we've kind of mentioned this before with other teams, is like they feel like they do sort of have this killer instinct, like when they need to go in, when they need to fight, and
Neo for sure,
their execution when they do it in the late game.
It's nice that like last week we were talking about that killer instinct that you need to have. Neo showcased that so much this weekend. Like, holy shit, that guy is taking fights that are looking lost, and he's like, I'm going in and I'm gonna kill all these fuckers. Like, that is the mentality you need to have sometimes. It's, hey, I'm gonna kill this fucking guy. I know that that's a crazy thing to say, but sometimes you need that mentality, and sometimes you also really get punished for that mentality, a la Wild Turtle that we've seen over for many years. But that's not the case with Neo. For the most part, he's actually looking really good and really freaking clutch, man. And somebody else, Ren is in the live chat saying Aframu's seeming clutch. Yes, he is. Aframu's looking really clutch as well, although he's playing pretty much just Alistair, if I'm mistaken.
Yeah.
I remember thinking in the draft they could have taken Rel like 6 times, but they definitely were trying to get EG to take it, and they could go for
it's in his name, dude. He has to play it.
Yeah, I guess so. Anyways, he's looking good. I will say, I was kind of surprised. They gave Fake God Player of the Week. Now, I think he looked really good on the Aatrox. I thought he had a good Aatrox game. I didn't think his Gnar game was that great. He had some nice plays on the Gnar, but he also had some pretty bad plays, and I thought it was hella inconsistent. I thought there was no doubt that Neo was going to get Player of the Week. That guy was absolutely insane popping off, and he didn't get Player of the Week. I was really surprised at that.
I think whoever decides like Player of the Week, probably he like was
Don't
going
they vote on it?
Well, I don't know, but they were probably like going up against somebody who had Neo in the roster for fantasy this week. They were probably just cheesed. That would be my guess.
Hard disagree. Someone in the live chat. Wait. Oh, you think Neo deserved it?
Oh,
also.
yeah.
No, I completely. Yeah, we're on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
Neo was looking great. Afro's looking good. I think the rest of the roster is looking okay, but where the reason why I had them worse is because some of the early game fights that they're taking, I think, are just ill-advised. The one time they went for the dive play, Fake God is dead. This was TSM, I'm pretty sure. Fake God is dead, and the other team has Shen, and you go for this dive play, and obviously it doesn't work out. Like, I don't know why you ever make that play, and that to me, like, that was noob. That was Beansoup, that play. That's what that play was. I don't know why the hell you're going for a dive play when the other team has Shen, and you don't have a top laner that can join with TP. He's freaking dead. Like, plays like that are really, really bad. And then there was the one TP play. Renekton TP's in, and Fake God waits until the Renekton is done his TP before he starts channeling his own TP. And they lose that
I remember that
was
one actually.
So late, man.
Yeah,
that was such a bad TP. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And obviously DigNAtas lost out on that fight. So plays like that are why I'm really afraid for this team. I'm happy that they're 10-5, but I don't think they're playing like a 10-5 team. And it's weird because they have a 3-0 weekend, and I was more hyped about this team last week when they were 7-5 than I am this week now that they're 10-5. I know that's really weird, but that's kind of how I feel about it.
The thing that I'm like, it's hard to judge DigNAtas because I just have this strong feeling like they might, who knows? They could go 2-1 next week. They could go 3-0. I don't really know who they play. We'll get into that because we'll pull up the games. But I don't think that this team is going to be very strong in best of fives, mainly because it feels like a lot of success from this team is from Dardoch in terms of whipping out some like wacky, and I wouldn't say off-meta jungle pick, but whipping out a lot of champions that aren't necessarily on your top priority lists. And while I think that is a very viable strategy in best of ones, like when you whip out your Kayn for the first time, or you pull out Nidalee like they have been doing a little bit when like the champion seems to really be falling out of meta, I think that's all great in best of ones. But we have sort of discussed on this podcast many, many times in the past, like when you're in a best of 5 and you pick a draft and it's like your quote unquote cheese draft and you lose with it, it's really not a good look, because like that's your one game that you're hoping you can get with this draft that you just did. And if you lose with it, it really doesn't look well for the rest of the series. So I am a little bit worried in terms of like best of 5s for this team. One, because it seems like they have a lot of cheesy jungle picks that they kind of make. Two, I don't think Fake God's champion pool is like too huge. Like the only champs that I would say he's like baller on is like Gnar and Aatrox maybe. I think he had a Gangplank game which was like half decent. And his Renekton is not too bad. But it feels like for me, like Gnar is Fake God's best champion. I want to get that out of there or take it away from him. And then like for
Aatrox is good too.
Yeah, no, I'd put that up there. And then for me, like
this Gragas, honestly, actually, he's got like 3 pretty good champions. But
And
sorry,
well-
I'm interrupting you. Go ahead.
also, you want to get Aphromoo off Alistar. Like one thing that I thought was really good about Aphromoo was he was playing a ton of Thresh earlier on in the split and even last split. He was playing a lot of these champions like the Thresh, the Bard, the Blitzcrank. Those champions have really seemed to sort of fall off of meta, and we're just seeing a ton of Rel Alistar or Tahm Kench if Rel ends up being banned. And I feel like if you take Aphromoo off, I just want to see how Aphromoo performs off Alistar. That's the main thing.
Yeah, that's fair. I completely agree. You want to talk about TSM now?
Yeah, we got the TSM up next.
So I have areas. So I put them as equal. You put them as equal as well. I have areas that I'm excited for this team, and then I have areas that I'm worried. I think they highlighted this on the broadcast that like their dragon control in the early game is not so good, and they're usually lacking in dragons, and so they could fall behind. They're also, as we've mentioned on this podcast, they're not incredibly proactive in making getting a lot of advantages in the early game. And that's where I'm a little bit worried. But when it comes to that Cloud9 game, let's be fair, because Cloud9 kind of threw, but also like,
kind of.
Like, well, okay, yeah, they more than kind of threw. They really threw. But like, tilt proof, like
Yeah,
the tilt proof honor.
No,
right
100%, 100%.
Yeah, and they team fight really well, and so there's a lot of things to be excited about with TSM, which is really crazy when we think about how this team started the season. I think I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm normally completely opposite, but I think there's not enough talk about how good Huni has looked and how Huni has looked like he's been able to tame himself a little bit. The one game, I don't know if it was this weekend or last weekend, he played Jace into Gnar, and I remember thinking old Huni would have overextended 6 times to try to kill this Gnar and died. And every time there was jungle pressure top, he played patient. He just waited to know that the jungler was on the other end of the map, and he went back to being aggressive again, which is exactly what you want to see in that matchup, and he still won the matchup. So I think that Huni is looking a lot more effective than he would have in the past. And so normally I'm like opposite, kind of flaming Huni, saying how overrated he is, but he's been pretty good this year, and I think he's a player that TSM fans should be excited about.
For sure. I think he's had a ton of improvements since his LCS week 1 and then lock-in performance. I think people were like really worried that we're already calling in for the substitutions. But like you just mentioned, I think Huni has been, like you said, doing really well. And one thing that I really liked out of TSM and how they use Huni is he's like one of the few top laners that, is able to like, they're totally fine with giving away the Gnar blind pick because they like to pick the Jace into it, and they also like to run these other comps where if they can get their hands on something like an Olaf or an Udyr, they love to put Huni on the Lulu top lane and just play through Spica. And I do think that some of TSM's best games are when they are playing through Spica as opposed to putting him on something like a little more AFK. Like that's when I think Spica is at his best, when they are like actively playing through him. And I think when Huni is just able to do that, and he's able to be so flexible in terms of playing yours like supports in like Lulu or whatever, he plays carries in Jace, and he can play the tanks like Shen. Like Shen, we've been talking about Shen for a long time, how we think the champion is super underrated and not a lot of people are picking it. Players like Huni and Impact have really done well on it this season, and we both said even a couple episodes ago that we want to see more Shen being played. And I don't like.
Even Licorice had a pretty good Shen game this weekend.
If I were to pick, like, I would say Huni's maybe the third best top player in the league behind Impact and Alfari.
Yeah.
So I mean, like,
no, I can get behind that. I think he's looked really, really good. I think TSM fans should kind of be relieved, because there was a lot of worry about like, hey, like, should Huni even be starting when you have Hanser playing in Academy? Well, clearly Huni starting is actually the right choice, and I have to say that TSM received a lot of flack, and from us as well. And well, I think Huni's looked pretty damn good. Also, Lost is looking pretty damn good too. He's starting to look a lot better. He's got that killer instinct, and he's finding the picks that he needs to find.
He
looked pretty
Kaisa
good on the
Tristana.
Game. No, he played the Tristana, and he looked pretty good on that this weekend as well. But yeah, I mean, look, you can't fault a guy for playing Kaisa.
No, I'm not faulting him. I'm just saying, like, you just pick Kaisa and you win the game, and like, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, TSM is very often just picking Kaisa B1, and like the champion is bonkers broken. Just pick it and win the game. Like, I'm cool with that.
Yeah. I don't have much more on TSM. I think that Power of Evil was trolling a little bit on the Seraphine pick. Sometimes his positioning was not so great, and he was in places that he shouldn't be. But overall, PoE's been solid almost the whole year. So like one bad game to me is not enough to be worried for Power of Evil. I think we've seen Sword Art start to perform well for quite some time now. I'm a lot less worried than I was at the start of season for him as well. And I thought Spica had a really good game. I can't remember which game it was, but I know that there was a game that I was really impressed with him this weekend. And so, yeah, things are looking pretty good for TSM. I'm just worried about their early game. That is it. But they're 10-5, and I think they're playing like a 10-5 team. So good for them.
Yep. Finally, top of the standings, we got C9 sitting at 11-4, one game ahead of everybody else in terms of being first place. We both have them as equal, and I'll just say it. I have them as equal because they shit on every team that's not Team Liquid, and that is fine to me. Like,
well, it's interesting because I would say they are now equal because they took those 2 losses this weekend.
Oh no,
like,
yeah.
If they hadn't taken those 2 losses, I would have said that they're not playing as good as their record. I would have said that they're performing worse, because to me, I don't think that they were playing that great of League of Legends. I've talked about how I still don't think Fudge is that great of a top laner. Also, there was a lot of controversy with the top lane power rankings this weekend. God. We need to talk about this because
I know how did he like. I don't get it.
There was so much flame. People were flaming Emily Rand. People were flaming Alorum for having him towards the bottom of their power rankings.
I thought we were talking about Freak.
Oh, well, that too. But there was a lot of backlash to those two because they had him so low. And then, Freak also had him number 2. Like, nah, Freak. Sorry, man. Dude. Like, I actually really respect Freak. I think he knows the game really well. I just think he swung and he missed on this one. Swing and a miss. Big time, because there's no fucking way Fudge has been the second best top laner in the league this year. I'm sorry, Freak. Nah. But to what people were saying about Alorum and Emily Rand, I think they had them 8 and 9. I don't remember where, but
yeah, I think Emily Rand had him 9. Alorum had him 8, I believe.
Sure, and I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but I think that they are a lot closer than Freak is with where they put him, because I don't think he's been that great whatsoever. Does he ever win a lane? Like, even sometimes he's put in a losing matchup. You're not going to win lanes, sure, but does he ever win a lane?
I don't know.
I'm actually asking. Maybe he has. It feels like every time I'm watching Fudge, he's down a significant amount in a matchup that you shouldn't be down as much as he is. That's what it feels like when I'm looking at Fudge. And I will also say that I don't think that Perks gets enough flack for how bad he has been. Now, Perks, there's times that he's absolutely popping off and he makes some nice plays. So it's not, Perks is nowhere near as bad as what Fudge has been. But Perks, I want to know his ISO deaths. I couldn't find it because, anyways. I want to know how many times Perks has died isolated this year, because I bet you he's towards the top. there is so many times that C9 has a lead, and then they end up throwing that lead a little bit because Perks gets killed in a side lane, and like that is just stuff that should not be happening. Perks should know when he can push up and when he cannot push up, and that it's really surprising to me that he's struggling with that specifically.
Yeah, I think at least for Perks, like he had his worst game of the split, in my opinion, on Victor in that game against TSM. That was a really terrible game. The thing that I think with C9, why even if they were to have won those two games, I probably still would have had them as equal, mainly just because it feels like they're experimenting a little bit with their drafts, both Saturday and Sunday, with the Caitlyn pick and the zero frontline. I was watching the Doublelift stream on both. I think we watched Doublelift stream the whole weekend. Maybe we watched broadcast on Friday, but I watched the Doublelift coach stream on Saturday and Sunday, where he had Meteos on, and they were just really like disliking these C9 comps that they were drafting, where they're drafting Control Mage mid and Caitlyn ADC with zero frontline. And it basically just means that you just cannot team fight almost ever because you have no reliable frontline for your Caitlyn and Azir to be able to dish out damage. But on the flip side, these kinds of drafts will lead you to a lot of early game success and early game leads because Caitlyn just naturally gets ahead in the game due to laning and tower plates. That's fine. Like, that's what is expected, and Cloud9 did that, where they got up early against Team Liquid and they got up huge against TSM. But they're really like struggling in terms of like, one, their decision making on being too over aggressive to fight. I've said this many times in the past. C9 is just so horny to fight all the time. When they just need to recognize like how they need to play the game and what they need to do in order to win this game. Like I talked about it before when we were talking about Team Liquid. In that game where Perks died in the side lane right before third Drake was about to spawn, Perks dying and them losing that third Drake was so important in that game where Cloud9 needs to be able to stack dragons as a potential win condition, and Team Liquid needs to be able to stall the game out to get to late game as they have the better team fight comp. And that one mistake from Perks really screws up that entire game against Team Liquid. Yeah. And while Cloud9, they're good enough of a team to be able to stay in the game and keep fighting and, make it, it was a really close game the entire way. And like I mentioned before, those two critical deaths in the side lanes from Perks and Fudge by Alfari were the turning points of that game and is what won Team Liquid the game, in my opinion, if you really go back and look at those games.
And well, it's funny that you say that because when you were talking about Perks dying in a side lane, I wasn't sure if you were talking about the TL or TSM game because it was happening.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, we can talk about the TSM game because that was like, that game was so weird. Like,
okay, so here you mentioned the Doublelift and Meteos co-stream. I was watching that stream at that time. I watched some of the games on that one, some on the regular. But anyways, at that time, I was listening to it. And I think you may have brought this up a little bit. I actually kind of agree with Doublelift about how he doesn't like the Caitlyn with the no frontline draft, but I will also say that loss had nothing to do with draft. They got such a huge lead in part because of that draft, and I honestly think that you should be able to close out that game. So to me, even though the draft thing might be true, to me they lost that game on their own because they were just throwing and being in really bad positions.
I wasn't saying that they're drafting what lost that game again in Team Liquid. Hell, I can't speak. I wasn't saying it was the draft that lost them the game against Team Liquid. I just thought that it seems like they are experimenting a little bit with these kinds of drafts. And maybe practicing for your playoff series. Like Cloud9 is going to make playoffs. That's no surprise. And from what we've seen in the LCS, like playoff seeding honestly doesn't really matter. It's about, can you play well during playoffs, and like, our teams like entering a hot streak on playoffs. And I think Cloud9 recognized like, hey, like we basically locked playoffs already. Like, it's not about just like shit stomping everyone. It's about like improving and having like a good read on the meta and good champion pools for when playoffs come around. And I think that's totally fine to do. Like, while yes, like they were able to afford to take those losses if they still want to get the number one seed, because they can still 3-0 this weekend and are guaranteed the number one seed going into the playoffs. But yes, well, I wasn't a huge fan of their draft against TSM because, as Doublelift said, they kind of just repeated their same mistake on Saturday where they just had zero frontline whatsoever. Like, they kind of had pseudo frontline with Gnar, but on that game, they had pseudo frontline with Gnar in that game against TSM. But it was kind of like just the same story where, like, once TSM was just able to like slightly get back into the game from their huge early game deficit, like, it was kind of over.
Yeah, and I agree completely with your point that it is good to see them trying different stuff. I think that that's something that you really, really want, especially if you know that you are going to be a team that makes playoffs, not just in spring, but you also know that you're going to make playoffs in summer as well. There's no way that Cloud9 is bad enough to miss out on playoffs in summer, especially when you've got such a good start to your season as well, right?
Hmm.
But yeah, I think it's good that they try different stuff, and I think it's good that they lose some of these games because I think you need a wake up call sometimes. We definitely know that Cloud9 could have used a wake up call last year, but yeah, no, I think everything is okay. It's not panic mode, but yeah, I think they are playing like an 11-14. We saw them 3-0 last week. It's not all doom and gloom. They're
Yeah.
still a good team, and yeah, I expect to see good things out of C9 still, and I'm excited to see them in playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you want to get to our Popoff and Beansoup awards?
Yep. You go first because I gotta.
No, you got to go first
No,
because
I'm
I
doing
don't
the.
remember mine.
Okay. Well, while I finish these graphics, getting them off the screen, I had
Oh,
Neo.
no.
I had Neo as my pop off for this week. We kind of discussed it a little bit before, where we were a little confused that we saw Fake God earn Player of the Week and not Neo. I will admit, I mentioned this before about fantasy team. I had Neo on my fantasy team, and he completely won me my fantasy playoff match.
How many points did he get, man? He had 14 kills in one game and 17 in another. How many points did he
Let
get?
me check. But from what I remember, Neo had 110.5 points, and my team, like
What?
my how many players are on a team? There's five. There's
5
seven
plus a
play.
team,
There's
right?
seven. Yeah, there's 7 players. Well, there's utility as well.
Oh, right.
But there's 7 players on a team, and my total points was 355. So Neo basically got a third of my total points, and part of that was due to like I had 100 Thieves players and I have Cloud9 players, so like Neo was really like carrying the load for my team. Sorry, Tommy, but
Ripmo 2.
yeah.
Okay,
But he
I
was
want
also
to
just
go with-
popping off. Like he was like we mentioned before,
Yeah.
he was just like completely 1v9ing the game he had on Callista. The other game where he was playing Kaisa, where he got the Penta, it kind of just felt like he was cleaning up a little bit. Like I don't think he wasn't playing bad by any means, but he was playing pretty well and just ended up like last hitting a bunch of kills. But I think that Callista game that he had, he played very, very well and was, like you mentioned before, taking these like situations where he might have been down one player in a team fight and was just like, I'm going in, I'm flashing on Callista, and I'm like pulling a tactical where I'm going to kill you all.
Yeah, he's just turning team fights around solo, and he's looking freaking amazing. The reason why I forgot it because I was originally going to go with Neo as well, and we talked about it earlier. I was like, "You go with Neo, I'll find someone else," and I forgot to find someone else. But I do remember now. I wanted to go with Broxa because I think Broxa is one of the biggest reasons why CLG is winning games. They got 2 wins this weekend, and Broxa's I think a huge part of it. I'm really happy for Broxa, and so I went with him. I think that he is deserving of a pop-off award. Maybe not as much as Neo, but still deserving nonetheless.
Yeah, he whipped out the Morgana jungle in
Yeah.
their loss to Evil Geniuses. No, who'd they lose to?
FlyQuest.
Immortal. No. Oh yes, FlyQuest. Sorry.
They lost to FlyQuest.
They lost to FlyQuest on Saturday, where he whipped out the Morgana jungle, which was pretty interesting. I remember when I was like watching the game, we were watching the game, and like the broadcast, like who was it? Azale and Flowers, I think, were the ones doing the broadcast that game, and they literally didn't notice that it was Morgana jungle until like
For a while.
they were like, what's going? Like, there's a Morgana in the jungle. Have they not traded? And it was like hella confusing. But what I will say is, Brox has been like talking up Morgana jungle for like almost a year now. I watch Brox's YouTube videos that he posts, and a lot of them, not a lot of them, but some of them are about Morgana jungle, and he actually thinks like it's a pretty good pick, and he has it like in his wheelhouse and has had it for like
I
the
thought he
last
looked
year.
pretty good on it.
Yeah, I mean,
I thought
hey, I
like,
whipped out
they
Morgana
didn't lose
mid.
that game because of Broxa. They lost that game because of Pobelter,
Oh
if
yeah,
we're being completely
I had to
honest.
whip out the Morgana mid and Clash in his honor.
Yeah, true. Yeah, that's why. All right, who did you give Beansoup to?
I gave it to Sven Skaren. That guy, like we said, he was griefing it this week. His Hecarim game against Dig was dog. His Mundo game against Immortals was also dog. I've said it before, I don't think Mundo's that great of a champion. It kind of just feels like it's the shit version of Udyr.
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know how to feel about the Mundo pick, but I definitely know how to feel about Svenskeren. Beansoup, man. I don't know what's going on. He can be better, and he hopefully he does turn it around because, well, I don't know. I don't want to see Svenskeren play bad. Like I'm still a fan. He's been around
Yeah.
like he's been around in the LCS for too long. I don't want to see him decline. I'd rather see him retire than look bad and be forced to retire. But anyways, maybe I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. For me, I went with Cloud9 because, well, I didn't know whether to go with Fudge or Perk, so I went with Cloud9 because they both continue to just throw games in the side lane. I was pretty vocal about it. I don't want to go too much more into it. I mentioned that they are the reasons why they're losing some of these games. They're just throwing some of their leads. And so I could also even throw Blabber in a little bit too, because Blabber was so far ahead in that TSM game. I don't know how he was up 55 to 10 CS or something like that, or maybe 18 or something like that.
He's just griefing his build. I don't
I don't know.
understand.
Yeah, you thought maybe you got the Leandries,
Well,
right?
I've also just talked about how I really don't think, like, okay, there are situations where I think Zanya's first item rush on Lilia is acceptable. When you're playing into a lot of melee champions, a lot of dive champions, basically you're playing a style of game where you know it's going to be a bloodbath, and maybe like you're that like person who needs to engage team fights in terms of like getting the flash Lilia ult or whatever. I think that's totally fine. But I still feel that in the majority of cases, you should be rushing a damage item first. And you can just sit on a stopwatch, whether or not that's you buy an early stopwatch or you run the perfect timing rune to give you a free stopwatch. I think that's all you really need, because the majority of times, yes, Azania's is like a nice luxurious item to have, so you can flash Azania's to be super safe. But there's also a ton of scenarios where I'm just seeing LCS junglers like flash Q our Zanyas, and they don't even need to Zanyas. Like I watched Broxa in his Lilia game on Friday, and he like flashed Q ulted and then Zanya's, and he Zanya's nothing when he like could actually be like in the fight dealing damage. And I'm just not liking like that the majority of people are going to the Zanya's rush. I'd much rather see Demonic Embrace, especially when you're so fucking far ahead in the early game. Like holy moly.
Yeah, that part I agree with, definitely.
Blabber and Cloud9 put Spica in the dumpster in that game, and it's just like was really sad to see him rush Zanya's and then go into Moonstone after pretty much nobody is building Moonstone on Lilia anymore after the Moonstone nerfs. It was just super confusing to me, and I didn't understand it at all. And he started the game like 0-0-4, and I think ended the game like 0-3-4 or something like that. Like he literally didn't do it. Maybe it was like 0-3-5, but he basically did nothing for the rest of the game.
Yeah, definitely. I think definitely Cloud9 is worthy of the Beansoup award after that, and after what we saw out of Perks and Fudge. But like I said, they could be better, and they're still probably the best or second best team in the league. Regardless, Beansoup, Cloud9. Let's get into game predictions now. Week 6, the last week we have of the spring split is upon us already. Damn, it's going by fast. But anyways, I'll let you start us off.
We got C9 versus CLG. I will take C9, even though I feel like maybe this game could be as competitive as the first one, just in terms of
maybe. I'm not paying my taxes though.
Oh yeah, well yeah. Well.
Next, I'm going Cloud9 next.
EG versus TSM. I'm gonna take TSM. This is definitely just like a winnable game for EG, but my reasoning for just picking TSM is they're just more consistent. Like
TSM's looking good. EG is not. To me, it's that simple. Like, don't get me wrong, EG can beat TSM, but I think you're kind of trolling if you go EG on this one.
Yeah. Next up, 100 Thieves versus Immortals. I'm going to stay on the hype train. I'm taking Immortals.
Ooh. I don't know, man. I don't know what to do. I'll go 100 Thieves. I don't even feel like I'm taking the favorite by taking 100 Thieves. Like, this one seems like a coin flip to me. It should be taking the favorite, right? If you're taking 100 Thieves, but I don't think it is. Anyways, 100 Thieves. I'm going 100. Next
up, Team Liquid versus DigNAtas. I'll take Team Liquid, even though Dig is actually ahead of them in the standings.
Yeah, I gotta go TL. Like I mentioned, they went 3-0 this weekend, but I don't think Dig looked that good for a 3-0 week. So TL is not even looking that great either. But ultimately, I think TL is a better team. Team Liquid for me.
Last game on Friday, we got Golden Guardians versus FlyQuest. I will take FlyQuest.
I'll take FlyQuest. I don't want to say anything about this matchup. It's two bad teams that are out of it. Maybe it's a good time to take an upset, but meh.
Next up, first game Saturday, TSM versus Immortals. I'm going to take TSM, but I feel like this is definitely a game where my prediction is most likely going to change based on the result of Friday's matches.
Gonna be a flip-floppy boy.
Yes.
I'll go TSM also.
Next up, we have Cloud9 versus DigNAtas. I will take Cloud9 again. Could be another competitive game, as both of these teams love to like just do a bunch of shit in the early game. But if that's the case, I'll go with Blabber in the early game for sure over like
I'm just gonna copy and paste my logic from the TL one over to this one. It's to me, it's the same reason. Cloud9 over Dig.
Next up, FlyQuest versus 100 Thieves.
100 Thieves.
Huh.
You're thinking about it.
I'm gonna take 100 Thieves, but I might have to be a flip flopper again, depending on the performances of Friday's matches.
Okay. Next up, EGTL.
EG actually beat Team Liquid in the first matchup of the season. I'm still gonna take Team Liquid again.
Yep. Me too.
Yeah. CLG versus Golden Guardians, last matchup of the Saturday. Are you paying the taxes, Jamie?
I am paying my taxes on this one. The CLG tax, I hope, pays great dividends in this investment. I guess taxes aren't necessarily investment. I don't know if they are or not. But anyways, I'm taking CLG.
I guess I am taking the tax too.
Let's go, CLG.
It feels like, honestly, the way that it feels like with me when I pick CLG is like when you're playing Monopoly and you land on the space in between Park Place and Boardwalk. Is it called Luxury Tax? Is that the spot? Whatever.
I don't know.
It's the spot in between Boardwalk and Park Place where you got to pay the fine, and that's what it feels like. I just landed there, and I'm forced to pick CLG because of how bad Golden Guardians is.
I think CLG is more of a chance card. Sometimes you get
No,
advanced to
no.
go, and sometimes you get sent right to jail. Like,
I mean, that's fair, I guess.
Anyways, all right, enough Monopoly analogies. What's next?
We got FlyQuest DigNAtas first game on Sunday. I'll take DigNAtas again.
Diggy, because I can't have them go 3-0.
Yeah, dude, that's kind of like...
Or 0-3, rather.
Yeah, Dig and... I've just looked at this now. Dig and Immortals actually have really hard weekends to close out
Tough
the season.
schedules. Yep.
Maybe their records are a bit inflated then. We'll see. But Golden
Perhaps.
Guardians versus TSM. TSM. Golden Guardians is trash.
TSM.
100 Thieves versus Team Liquid. 100 Thieves actually beat Team Liquid in the first matchup, but that's not going to happen.
Dude, I want 100 Thieves to start looking better, specifically so that this matchup looks really good, you know?
Maybe.
But I'm not counting on it yet, so TL.
CLG.
Do we have any different picks yet? Do we have anything different?
I picked Immortals against 100 Thieves.
Okay, so we have something different. Okay, carry on.
And yeah, that's it. But I also said I might flip-flop on both TSM Immortals and FlyQuest 100 Thieves. Because
you got a couple flip-flop options. Okay,
yeah.
well, what's the next game? I've already lost it where we are.
CLG versus EG. Are you paying your taxes again?
Whoa, man.
Too much?
That's a lot of taxes, man.
Dude.
Okay. I'll take CLG. I'll pay my taxes on this one, but this is one where I have to admit I might flop as well.
I'm picking EG. I can't do it twice.
Maybe I'll stick with I'll try to stick with CLG. We'll see. We'll
okay,
see.
last match of the season. Immortals versus Cloud9. Unlucky for my Immortals boys. I hope that they look good on Friday. Like, I just hope they go 2-1 so they at least have a shot on making playoffs.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing them make playoffs either. It'd be nice to watch this team in a best of 5. Yeah, Cloud9 though.
Yeah, like Immortals definitely has to play well this weekend for them to be able to make playoffs because
you got to prove you're a playoff team now. You got a tough schedule here.
EG and 100 Thieves also have, difficult weekends as, they have a chance to lose a lot of games as well. So yeah, you're right. EG kind of does have to prove themselves here.
Okay, let's get into some quick news. Holy shit, we got a lot of stuff on the quick news docket. Okay, go.
We said this before. LCS playoffs are on patch 11.5. The big meta, like pro play meta nerfs that were on there is Azir is getting nerfed. He's getting 10 less base damage on his W per level. Gragas nerf. His Q is getting nerfed from 60 to 80 mana to 80 mana at all ranks now. Rel is getting nerfed. I think she's getting a 2-second cooldown nerf on her Ws. The one where you jump on them and then the other one where you flip them over. Seraphine's getting nerfed. Mainly for... Well, not mainly. Seraphine's getting nerfed. Her ult cooldown is getting hella increased.
Rank 1, it's 3 minutes. That is a long ulti CD.
Yeah, it's like Shen Galio ult and shit like that.
Yeah. Anyways.
But also her notes, her passive thing, is getting nerfed for support. So like when there's an ally around, your notes are going to deal less damage. But for Seraphine's solo lane, the notes are a bit buffed. They're making them deal a little bit more damage.
All right. Anyway, so lots of nerfs. Maybe next week we should do like maybe.
Hey.
Oh, I thought my bad. Sorry. Go ahead.
Last nerf. Udyr's getting nerfed. He's getting another nerf to his Phoenix stance passive damage.
Yeah.
That's it.
I think he got another small little nerf as well to maybe his health or something. I don't remember. But what I
Oh,
was gonna say
yes.
was
7
maybe next
HP
week
per
we
level, I
should,
think.
if we could try to fit in next week, maybe we'll do a topic about how we think 11.5 will impact the playoffs. Maybe if we
Maybe.
yeah, hey, we'll see. To be determined, but yeah, because I didn't really have time to look at the patch notes all that much. I didn't even know they were out, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah, literally couldn't even remember what patch we were on.
Yeah, we'll see. If we think it's relevant enough next week, we'll have a little topic on that. But anyways, what else we got?
Apparently, there were some earthquakes in Iceland and a potential imminent volcano eruption that could be happening.
Man, so
They're gonna ruin.
MSI
They're yeah, MSI is gonna get ruined again or something, maybe.
The thing is, I was watching a video that was saying like one of the volcanoes that might erupt hasn't erupted in like 800 years or something like that. Like, why now? When MSI decides to go to Iceland, and apparently this volcano is supposed to erupt. I don't know. They had 18. This sounds like a made up number. They had 18,000 earthquakes in the last week. Now, some of those are like little baby earthquakes. I can't
I
say I'm an
presume
expert.
that like it's just like seismic activity.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on the subject whatsoever. I can't tell you what a baby earthquake or seismic activity really means. The point is, that's a
Tectonic plates
lot
and
of
that.
work. Yeah. I know the bare minimum. Anyways, I hope MSI is not canceled. That's why we're telling you guys this. You guys are probably like, what the hell? What does this have to do with anything? Maybe they have to find a new location for MSI, but haven't heard anything on that yet. But that's, yeah, just monk
Shout
a
out
S on that.
Mr. Nicolucci, old geography teacher. He was a beast.
Okay, good for him. Next, we got Evil
Good guy.
Geniuses. Evil Geniuses. They picked up a new sponsor, Bud Light. I mean, we've seen Bud Light sponsor the LCS before. It looks like they're looking to sponsor LCS teams now as well. And EG picked up a sponsor, and well, yeah, we're seeing like more like beer sponsors and stuff like that.
It's kind of weird. Like I don't like associate like drinking with the LCS. Like whenever
Yeah.
if I'm gonna be watching like a football game or a basketball game or like a UFC fight, like yeah, I'm down to like drink. But like when I'm watching LCS games, like not really.
Do you think it's because people like that watch the LCS don't normally watch with other people? Like you and I normally
Maybe.
watch from our own place, you know, we watch by ourselves, but we watch in Discord together kind of thing. Like when I went to Scott's yesterday to watch, like we had some beers while watching the game. It feels like it's more of a social thing. I don't
Yeah.
know. I wonder if how people watch the LCS. Like if people want to comment, I'd be curious to know if you guys watch by yourself normally, or if you normally watch with friends. I'd be interested to know. Maybe you're chilling in Discord. Leave a comment in the comment section. I'm kind of curious
The thing
if you want to share that.
the thing for me is like maybe the reason why I don't associate it with it is because like I feel like whenever I'm watching LCS, like I'm really focused on watching in terms of like the teams and the gameplay and everything, and like as opposed to like the average LCS fan is just like watching it for like just watching it. Like they're not focused on anything. It's like a general like sporting event. You're just like watching it, and like drinking
Yeah.
is like just goes along with that. Maybe that's
Yeah.
why, because like whenever I'm
Perhaps.
watching LCS, I'm like hella focused on like what's actually happening in the game, what mistakes teams are making, draft or whatever.
Yeah. Anyways, next on the list is okay. This is exciting. This is cool. I think whoever came up with this idea, kudos, because Kobe and Kadriel are, I guess, swapping places next week. I don't know if it's casting or if it's just analyst desk or what it is exactly, but basically, Kadriel's going to be part of the LCS next week, and Kobe's going to be part of the LEC. And I just think that's a really cool idea to try to bring some of like the audiences to to the other product. I think that's a pretty cool idea.
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
Kobe. I like Kadriel. I think they'll be good
They're both
additions on
beasts.
each broadcast.
Yeah, both broadcasts win by getting the other guy. Next, oh yeah, someone on TL tested positive for COVID, so they're going to be playing from home for some time. Not really much to say there. They're not the first team to have players test positive for COVID, so yeah. Anyways, whatever.
What's good about that though is Team Liquid has been one of the few teams that has, they've done a lot of changes, like in terms of like their facility and how they run it and how everything works with COVID and everything. Now they've shown that a lot on their YouTube channel in terms of like the rigorous processes that they do in terms of testing, the like I don't know, cleaning or cleansing stations that they have for like going in and out. And I think they even do like the tracing where like you can tell like what people have been in contact with other people. So yes, while that happened, I think it's probably the best case scenario that happened to Team Liquid, because from my understanding, like they have like the most infrastructure put in place for that kind of a thing.
Yeah, I remember watching it in one of their videos, I don't remember what their TSM Legends quote unquote is called for TL, but whatever that is, whatever it is, I've seen it and they look pretty good, but like, they look like they're doing a good job with handling COVID. What's next? The content thing. Explain that.
well, I can't really even explain it the best myself, but
Yeah.
if you remember, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, the LCK was copyright striking a lot of highlight channels for their games. And with this thing that just came out earlier today, it sort of seems that the LCS is doing something very similar, which is supposed to take into effect at the start of MSI. I didn't exactly have all the lingo down in terms of like what everything meant, but
It's not really clear, is
yeah,
it?
it's
Like,
not
it's not
exactly
like,
clear, but it feels
yeah.
like the same thing is happening where these YouTube channels that are pretty much just there for reposting the LCS VODs and posting the highlights of the LCS games are like attempting to be shut down by Riot unless you provide some sort of like transformative content, whether like that's your own reactions to it. If you know the channel Onivia, who has been doing like LOL highlights for such a long time, whenever he has LCK highlights on now, he has to put his own like face cam in the bottom left corner to provide a reaction to make it considered like transformative content. Again, like I said, I don't exactly know all the lingo, so like don't quote me on this. Like don't take what I'm saying as
Yeah.
like that's what it is. Hey, maybe
The
they'll come
way
out
they
with a little
word it,
more about it. Like we'll hopefully learn some more, but it was weird and wordly.
yeah, the way they word it in the thing though, it seemed to me like people that do highlight videos are still in the clear. But I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see. I'm a little bit like nervous because I hope they don't mess with, like, I really like watching the highlight videos. I hope that they don't mess with that. But yeah, we'll see. It looks like there's going to be some change, and they felt it was worth announcing it. So, anyways, we'll see what the hell that means. And the last thing on the list was Dig partnering with Mirage for an amateur team. I don't know exactly what all this means, but it looks like DigNAtas is investing in an amateur team. So that's pretty cool.
DigNAtas.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting, and I think that it's nice to see the North American orgs jump on the NA bandwagon more and more with trying to build up and build amateur teams. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's everything, right?
Yep.
That's everything for quick news. Thanks everyone for being in the live chat. We had quite a few you guys in here this week, and thank you all to our new listeners. Please do subscribe if you're listening on YouTube or whatever the hell you are listening on. Make sure to follow us on Twitch if you want to catch us live. Like I said at the start of the show, we might be changing the time that we go live. We'll try to let you guys know on Twitter. I'll try to remember to let you guys know. And yes, someone in the live chat just reminded me there is a Discord link in the YouTube description. I think there's also one in Spotify. You said, Nolan?
Yeah.
Yeah. So JNT is going to put one in there if it's not already in there.
It's already in
and
there.
We're going to do something. I don't know. I don't want to announce it yet because we don't know exactly what we're going to do yet. But we're going to do something where we try to get people involved in the Discord. We might do something for the LCS finals, like the playoff finals. Not really sure exactly what yet, but I think we'll try to get involved people, and we'll maybe try to get people in Discord for that. But once we know exactly what's happening, we'll be sure to let you guys know because we're not exactly sure ourselves yet of what that's going to look like just yet.
All right. I think you're going to close us out. I think that's it.
Yeah.
I don't
Thanks
have
again, everyone, for listening. We got a lot of new viewers last week and the week before and the week before that. So it's nice to have our community growing. It's been really cool. And thanks, everyone, for showing up. And thanks, everyone, for listening. This has been episode 32 of the Clown Fiesta podcast.